It's our second round of monthly training that Windsor is trying to put on. So please, if you have any recommendations for us, send it our way. We'll help program next months in advance. This month we'll be focusing on fraud trends. So we have Mike, who is our on-staff senior fraud investigator. I can't remember how we titled your job description, but he's been with us for, what has it been now, about, Mike?
2 years.
2 years?
Yes.
2 years, and has brought us a wealth of knowledge. He comes with a massive investigative history. If I remember right, some time on the police force, time with other lenders, time actually with Fannie Mae doing the exact same thing with fraud detection. So he has seen it all, has numerous ways of investigating for us, has been a great help, has been able to prevent fraud situations for us in the past. So wanted to extend that invitation out to our community to say, what are some red flags for loan officers, processors of our partners to be able to help find some of this stuff before it gets to us even, and puts you guys in a better position to prevent anything. It's nothing any of us want to deal with, but unfortunately we are seeing an uptick of it due to the market, higher rates, lower inventory. Has always seen it. Anything. We see it from borrowers generated. We see it real estate agents coaching borrowers on how to do it. And unfortunately, yes, we've even seen some loan officers. We've had probably one about a month or two ago. It was a 17-year veteran loan officer that altered a bank statement for $2,000 for a down payment. And we caught it. And that loan officer ended their 17-year career with that establishment. And it, according to her, was the first time she had ever done anything like that. We preached to all our staff, one loan is not worth your job. And that, unfortunately, that one loan of $2,000 cost her her job. And that's not anything I want to see any of our partners to go through. But enough of me talking. I will go ahead and turn it over to Mike.
Good morning or good afternoon to everybody, depending upon your venue. It's morning for me here. I'm in the very southern part of Arizona. And so let's get going. Like Kevin mentioned, the mortgage fraud has a direct impact, not only as us as the quote lender, but to use the originator, the loan officer, brokers of record. If you're on a correspondent side, it even has a greater impact in that it can cause negative ramifications and adverse actions. One of the biggest ones we have is pricing. It directly impacts pricing, and also doing the worst case scenario, which nobody likes doing, and that's getting into buybacks and repurchases. So the purpose of this training, we are targeting loan officers and brokers. By the way, this is the same training that we do with our internal staff here at Windsor. And we want to partner with you so that at the origination level, which is the front line for helping preventing mortgage fraud, it's not the underwriter front line. You as the loan originator, broker shop, processor, you're the front line defense against this. And I've seen way too many times when we call out fake pay stubs, offer letters, occupancy issues, where we get feedback from our broker partners that, I didn't know, and how am I supposed to know? And now, hopefully with this training, you're going to be able to see things and say, wait a minute, I remember listening to Mike on that seminar, and this has all the classic signs of, what we call red flags, of not being a valid scenario or a valid document. So we're going to go through that, and I'm going to make a prediction here that one or two of the examples that we show you, you're going to have seen before, and you're going to go, oh my gosh. So hopefully you'll be able to say going forward, wow, I've seen that before. I don't think it's real. And we'll even get into what I recommend you do with it. Okay. Well, actually, you don't send the loan to us. That's the first thing. but if you want us to, I'll just tell you what I want you to do. Contact your account executive and forward the document to your account executive, and the account executive will be, they can directly send it to me, and we will evaluate it and give you our honest opinion of it. No negative ramifications on it either. We don't want to see the loan if we come back and say we don't think it's real, but I can also give you some pointers on how you, in the origination side, some due diligence that you can do to further evaluate it. Okay, so let's get into it. Next slide, please. I can't tell if the next slide is up.
Yep, it's the pay stub fraud slide.
Yep, it's okay. So let's go back to the mortgage fraud real world scenarios and how to detect them. Be the slide before that. Okay, so we mentioned in the teaser through the Facebook ad or the direct ad, the top 3 things that we're seeing. So this may not align with what you're seeing from the agencies. I know Fannie does a great job putting out red flag alerts. Freddie does as well, and some of our investors do. But this is what we are seeing uniquely here at Windsor Mortgage. And this is doing a look back of the past 24 months. So this is what we call real world scenarios, and we want to show you how to detect them. Number 1, pay stub fraud. It's at the point right now where I think it's systemic in nature. It's fairly easy to do. It's also very easy to detect and to get caught. The next one is employment schemes, and this has to do with offer letters for fake future employment. The guidelines say you can do an offer letter, but it's got to be realistic, and we're going to show you how that you can detect whether or not it's valid or not. And the third one is occupancy misrep, which, by the way, is creeping up slowly to replace employment schemes as our number 2 fraud or misrep scheme. Next slide. So pay stub fraud, spotting the fakes. Unfortunately, we have what I call the online pay stub generator websites. They're out there. Several years ago, FTC brought a lawsuit against the major ones to shut them down. Some were shut down, but then I'm not a legal guy, but they've reappeared. And for whatever reason, they're out there. Letter of the law is, yeah, I guess they're legal. They're still there. However, there's some really unique red flags on it. The biggest deal is the template that are used. And I will show you a sample of one template on the next slide. Don't go there yet, but
Okay.
I'll show it to you. The biggest deal is they're very generic in design. Some have logos. You have the ability to upload your own logo on it, which people do a very poor job of that. You can see, I'm a Photoshop guy, and when you upload like a very small JPEG image into a document, it gets pixelated, or it has what they call artifacts around it. It looks like little pointy edges around it. That's called artifacts because the file's not big enough, or you're trying to embed a JPEG into a PDF. So that's one tell. Rounded numbers. I mean, everybody who's gone through any sort of fraud training since they become a loan officer knows that that's a big red flag. Does it mean on face value that it's fraud? Of course not, but it is a red flag. And when we mention red flags, very rarely will we make a denial or decline or a fraud determination with one red flag. It's what we call the totality of the circumstances. So if we do a 40,000 foot look view and we look it down and we look at all the red flags in the loan and we say nothing makes sense, that's going to help us determine it. Now, do I have a smoking gun? Of course not. But if we look at the totality of the circumstances, the deal doesn't make sense. So we also have what we call no traceable employers online. And I see this more often where you have somebody in a pay stub making, six plus figures. Unfortunately, they're brand new jobs sometimes, but even if they're not, but we do just a basic Google search and we can't find anything on them. They may have a Facebook page, But that's about it. There's no SOS registration. There's no, we use certain tools where we can actually get, credit ratings on business. They don't even have credit ratings. So, and if you can afford to pay an employee 6-figure salary, you're going to have those. Employee's address, the employer address, it's a resident or a virtual office. So again, it's a red flag, but up until recently, I owned a business and it was my residence. Does that mean I'm committing fraud? Of course not, but it's a red flag. If you have somebody that is making, tons of money running, let's just say, I'll give an example, a plumbing company, and they say that they're the new senior vice president making $20,000 a month, and they're running it out of a small apartment building. We've seen that. That's a red flag, and that should be a red flag for you as well. Virtual office. We see a lot of these. A virtual office is just what it says. It doesn't really exist. It'll be linked to a brick and mortar address. However, when you Google it or you go to Google Maps, you pull it up, you'll see it's a very small P.O. box storefront. That's what it is. And they use that as an address. And you get mail there. Some of them are more sophisticated where they have they'll say Suite 100. So Suite 100, they have a person who actually answers the phone, and they'll answer the phone, ABC Plumbing, can I help you? And ABC Plumbing and 500 other businesses use the same address. So there is an address in Brooklyn, New York. I believe it's 115 Lee Avenue. I just know this off the top of my head. It's actually made the news where it has thousands of LLCs registered to it. And it was all part of the PPP Paycheck Protection Plan fraud scheme, where people were registering LLCs at this little tiny hole in the wall mail drop. And they were getting these big PPP loans knowing that they're going to be forgiven. And they were using these LLCs as their brick and mortar. Of course, we know how they went. You just had to represent, I have 20 employees, here's what I've been paying them. And then the government sent you a check. Now they're cracking down on those now and people are going to jail. But I still see that address come across occasionally, and I'll see it. And I know our underwriters have been trained for it as well. I believe it's 115 Lee Avenue in Brooklyn. And if you don't believe me, Google it. You'll see what I'm saying. In fact, you'll even see, I think it was a New York Times article about it. Another thing we do on the fake pay stubs is we cross-reference with bank statement deposits. And we'll get into that to show how even that could be manipulated, believe it or not. I see it all the time, but there are a lot of times, in fact, I've got 3 or 4 active cases going right now where it's the quote second job that they started coincidentally the same date as the 1003 is dated, and they needed to have this job to qualify, but there's no matching deposits. Next slide, please. This is probably, I call this my blue stripe. This is the #1 pay stub that I see that comes in. And if any of you all on the call, if this just raised the hair on the back of your neck, it should. This is the #1 fake pay stubs that we see. This costs a whopping $4.99. And when you download it, if you fill out the information, and when we, not right now, but when we get to the next slide, I'll run it by you. When you download this, you enter information yourself. For an extra $1, it gives you a tool to automatically calculate state and local taxes. So for you all in New York City, you know that you've got your state tax, you've got local New York City tax, there's like 3 different taxes for New York City. And for a measly $1, they'll auto calculate those for you. Your Social Security, the Medicare, everything. And I've seen some where they just don't want to spend that $1 when they're making up a fake pay stub, and the calculations are way off. And I just go, well, okay, thank you for making my job easier. So if you look at this pay stub, I think everybody would agree that this is very, very generic. Now, I put in red, this is a real live pay stub from a real life fraud case. I put in red, no 401k, healthcare, and dental. Not everybody has those, but it is a red flag. But the reason why it was a material issue for this particular pay stub is that when we looked at the W-2s in box with 12 and 13, we saw the withholding deduction credits that they got for 401k and a healthcare plan and a dental plan. So why, if you see it on a W-2, why wouldn't you see it on the pay stub? So that was a big deal. There's a couple other things on this. This particular one, I had to redact it, but the full Social Security number was listed. That's a huge red flag in today's day and age. You should never, ever see a full Social Security number on a pay stub. Another red flag on here, and I don't know how well you can see this, but it's one thing that it caught my eye, and it's one thing that, I don't know, I guess I have a knack for doing it. I will look at font, and if I stare at it for more than just, maybe 5-10 seconds, things just pop out to me. So when I stared at the font under the year to date, what popped out on me is if you look at the year to date for the Illinois state tax, missing a decimal point. And pay stubs just don't do that, bona fide ones. Now, would I say this is fraud? If that was the only issue with this pay stub, would I say it's fraud? No, but it's the totality of the circumstances. A, being the fact that, and what we can do is 9 times, so I actually keep a library. I've got a library in a folder where I keep examples of the fake pay stubs. So when I'm doing a fraud investigation, I can actually source it for the underwriter to say, here's where it came from. Next slide, please. So this right here is one of those sites, pay stubs now, and I'm not singling them out. It's just one that I went eeny, meeny, miny, mo. There it is. Okay. So this is one of the more sophisticated ones. This does have the extra $1 to spend for that, and they give you 7 different templates. But in looking at this earnings statement, that template, what well-known pay stub processing company does this look like? What does it look like? Anybody know offhand? Yep.
ADP.
Yep, Monica. That looks like an ADP pay stub, but it's missing what? There's no logo. Now, if you look long enough on the internet, you'll see ones that actually have ADP logos. But there's even a tell on those that have the ADP logos. So if you look at this pay stub right here, you can see how easy this is. And we see this pay stub a lot. And 9 times out of 10, when we see it, it's fake. And what we have done when unfortunately, we do have occasionally an unscrupulous broker, we'll go back and do a pipeline review using this pay stub. And you see the shaded box at the top left corner. That's all these codings, and nobody understands the method of madness or what they mean. But when we look at the pay stub template from borrower to borrower to borrower, it's never changed. It's the same. So they bought a pay stub template, downloaded it in a PDF, and they're just regurgitating it using the same one over and over again, and they don't change anything on it. Now, these are so we actually verified legitimate use of one of these sites and employer. Okay. So if you look at these pay stubs right here, the last 2 that I examples, these are probably the 2 most common that we see. Again, can a legitimate employer use these pay stubs? If I'm a little mom and pop and I'm writing hand checks and I got an employee that needs to show paychecks to rent a house or for employment verification, sure, you can do that. And if it's legitimate, I understand. But remember, when you're doing mortgage loans and a lot of the borrower scenarios we get, these are borrowers that are purported to be making thousands and thousands of dollars a month from companies that are purporting to be well-established companies, well-established companies, will never use these. It's just not cost effective. Anybody have any questions on this pay stub template or the generators? Okay, next slide, please. So now we're going to get into employment schemes, and in this, I include offer letters where you have a new job or promotion. It just says, unbelievable income increases. I say it shocks the conscience of believability for the underwriters. You're looking at it, and the hair in the back of your neck goes up, at least with mine, and you just go, no way. The biggest one we have, borrower has a brand new salary job making 100,000 plus a year. The previous job was self-employed or a very lesser paid job, real live scenarios, Uber drivers, working fast food restaurant, working in as a laborer. And now all of a sudden they have a new job, sometimes only based on an offer letter. And we have to make a determination as to whether we believe it or not. The purported employer is, a small local business, nail salon, fast food, French fries, a small trucking company. And we have ways of looking at those businesses and determining if they can support paying an employee that kind of money. It's not an exact science, but it can actually get us within the ballpark reasonably. And this is the big thing: the start date of the new job. It just conveniently aligns with the loan application and or the purchase agreement. That's not, again, it's a red flag. On its own, it's not a deal killer. But when you've got fake pay stubs in the file, you've got employers that, when we look at them, we don't see that they're established or they can support an employee. That's where we have problems. The pay stubs are very generic. For those of you that have seen what I call the Intuit or Quicken pay stubs, they're very recognizable. When I had my own business, I used Intuit / Quicken, the same company. I used them to do all my accounting, and I had an option where I could actually generate pay stubs and do direct deposits that would show up on their bank statements. I could do all that. So I could give my boss, Kevin Nelson, a pay stub saying he makes 100 grand a month as the senior executive vice president of my little hole in the wall mom and pop business, and he'd have a pay stub for it, and he would actually have direct deposits. That sounds kind of scary, doesn't it? It is, believe me. Okay, so again, you will see matching deposits, and I put that in parentheses because we know that deposits are not real. And a lot of times we see scanned handwritten checks. And in today's day and age, those are so rare. I'm not saying it's fraud, but they are very rare. Again, totality of the circumstances based upon the red flags. Now, our suspicions and what we have proven in the past is that it's a very, very small minority of brokers that are colluding with small business owners to generate these pay stubs and these fake deposits. They're fake jobs, fake pay stubs, stage deposits. Most of them I throw into an FBI mortgage fraud classification called affinity fraud. Affinity fraud is where you have a common link of a shared ethnicity, a shared community, place of worship. It's a place where you see, all these similarities, and we have, and we can even link the actual loan officers or the brokers to being part of these shared communities as well. And again, just because you have that doesn't mean it's fraud. Totality of the circumstances, it all adds up. Next slide. So how do we fight this? These are just some of the tools that we use here in the Mortgage Fraud Investigations Department at Windsor. We have other tools, but these are the big ones, and these are ones that you can use yourself. Most of them are free. The work number / Equifax. You say, well, the work number validates it. We have seen on occasion where we'll have the work number is verifying a brand new job with income. And we look at it and we see that the pay stubs were generated by Intuit/Quicken. Intuit and Quicken, along with ADP, along with Paylocity, along with Paychecks, they have a sharing agreement with the work number Equifax. Equifax owns the work number. And they have a sharing agreement where they share the data. So if you're, the example I gave you, if I, with my Intuit software that I used to have, I could generate a pay stub. And I could actually do direct deposits. And guess what? That'll report on the work number. We have ways of deciphering the data to show that it's not valid. But just because it's on the work number, and it's rare, but 99.9% of the time you can rely on it, but it's not bulletproof. So we also use other verification tools. Salary.com is free. And what I like about salary.com is that you can actually boil it down to a geographic area. So, if you want to say that you're a nail technician in San Francisco, California, and you're making 100 grand a year and excuse me, on a W-2, and you could actually go into salary.com and put in the zip code, you could put in the range, and then what salary.com, they partner with real businesses and they get a range. So they have a low, they have a high, what they call a median. And, if you're blowing way past the high even, that's a red flag. Now, can a nail technician in the San Francisco Bay Area make 100 grand a year? Absolutely. It depends on your clientele and your location. Google Maps, does the employer exist at the claimed address? We see a lot of this where, it's like, oh, I'm sorry, you run a big trucking business and you're running it out of your apartment. Where are your trucks, right? Clear checks. We do ask for cleared, front and back images. Do they match the actual stub? So in fact, if you look at the fake pay stub example that we had before, it actually had a check stub number on it. And then we actually look at the pay check itself and it doesn't match. That is possible, but it is a red flag and we do look into it. Sequential numbering, that's a big thing. We see, especially if you're representing yourself, that you have many employees and every check is sequential, and even sometimes out of order sequential. This is fraud 101, by the way. Bank statements. This is huge. We look for same day or within a few day multiple deposits. And the deposits are not usually traditional payroll. They're Zelle deposits. When I see a Zelle deposits being represented as payroll, that's a big red flag because that tells me that you're not reporting the income to the IRS. And letters of explanation. There's nothing wrong at the origination level to saying, you know what, ask for job duties, pay justification. There's nothing wrong with that because you as the originator should want to know this information. We don't want you just to throw it up on the wall of Windsor Mortgage and let the underwriter figure it out. We want to partner with you to get ahead of this stuff. LexisNexis, now that does cost money, but there's also state databases that are free. Florida has a great one called sunbiz.org where you can go in there. It's great. DOT, ask for pay stubs that go over a certain time period. And I am running long here, so let me go on the next slide, which is occupancy misrep, and then we'll finish up. So under occupancy misrep, the biggest red flag we see is representing the property as being a primary residence when they own other rental properties. Most of them have been recently purchased and they're within just a few miles of the departure residence. We see a lot of this. If you read through the red flags on here, there's nothing in here you haven't seen, like the agency training that you've done. The HOA reflecting rental coverage, we've all seen that. That's a big red flag. But it's the last bullet point I want everybody to focus on, that the financial story just doesn't make sense. One final note on occupancy that we do, just go to the next slide, recap, and we'll finish this up. But one final thing on occupancy, we at Windsor Mortgage, we will do what we call post-occupancy door knock inspections. So because occupancy inspection, you're asking us to be a mind reader because it's the intent to occupy within 60 days of the note rate. And in doing so, we have to read the minds of the borrower. And, you know, we go in thinking that everybody is a good borrower. We want to do these loans. But if it doesn't make sense to us and we don't have any reason to deny it, like bulletproof, what way to deny it, what we do is we literally send private investigators. They knock on the door and say, "Hi, is Mr. Borrower here?" And that sometimes it validates it, sometimes it does not. So if the story feels off, it probably is. Unbelievable income, tidy business, same day pay stuff. Ask more questions. Owner occupied claim, but there's rental signals. Dig in deeper. Ask questions. Use the tools at your disposal, but moreover, use your instinct. We all know a good deal when we see it. And fraud detection is everybody's responsibility. It's not just me and mortgage fraud investigations. It's not the underwriter. It's not the account executive. It starts with you, the originator, because it has a direct impact on you. If we do find fraud on a closed loan, you know, we don't want to have to go down the road of, you know, buybacks and stuff like that. Nobody wants those. Okay. Somebody had a question about vehicle tracking.
Yes. Ray said, what is vehicle tracking shown in the last slide?
That means when I pull a LexisNexis report, LexisNexis shows vehicles registered. And if you see a history of vehicles being registered at another address, that's a red flag. Because that's, you know, they'll lie about where they really live on a loan application, but they usually tell the truth where they're registering their car. So it's not a deal killer. Again, it's a what? Red flag, totality of the circumstances. So hopefully with this presentation, I've given you some awareness of what we're seeing, and you will, I believe you will, somebody's asking if you can get a copy. I believe you can. Somebody's asking about 4506. Of course we run those. If you want to get ahead of it and run it yourself, we always condition for the broker to run them. And it's got to be done through a third party. But yes, if we need to, and this just came on the top of my head. We recently had a borrower who was a CPA that provided her own tax transcripts at origination. To me, as a fraud guy, that's a red flag. And when we went to verify the tax transcripts, she altered them. So that's a big no-no. I'm sure she's getting in trouble for that. Anyway, any other questions? If you would like to reach out to me directly, I have no problem with that. I think Teresa will be able to share my email address. It's very simple. I am very busy. I do try to get back to everybody quickly though, but start with your account executive, you know, engage him or her. They've all gone through this training and they're all on board because they don't want mortgage fraud either. Again, we want, you know, I assume if you're on this call that you're interested in protecting your business, and we want to partner with you to prevent mortgage fraud. And if you just pay attention to these three items, the three red flags that we're seeing for the most common fraud schemes, we think that your business will improve. Kevin, why is it advantageous for a broker to pay attention to mortgage fraud?
Thanks, Mike. Now, our saying we want to partner. We don't want anybody on the hook for it. And at the end of the day, the more mortgage fraud we're able to prevent at the very beginning is less time and resources we're spending, which then reflects back in the rates that we can provide out to everybody. Is if we're caught holding fraud as a buyback on unsellable due to the fact of fraudulent documents in there, it raises our costs to originate. And then unfortunately that all goes downstream. So we want to keep everybody's cost as low. Nobody wants these. So that's why we wanted to give you this presentation and all work together to prevent that and have better business. With that, I think we'll wrap up, give everybody some time back in their day. Thank you so much for logging on. Hope everybody has a great rest of their day.